This is David Taub for GVWire. I am here today with Councilman Lee Brandt, who wants to be the next mayor of the city of Fresno. Councilman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, first topic, and I think it's been the main topic in this campaign. How will you improve public safety?
Public safety is in a crisis in this city, in this state, and it's primarily brought on by the actions in Sacramento, starting with the neutering of the three strikes law a few years ago, the state prison realignment taking thousands of prisoners and putting on the streets and cities of California, Prop 47, which was deceptively put out to the voters a few years ago that decriminalizes most property crimes, and now Prop 57, which is even worse. And so for all the cities like Fresno, we have thousands of people out in the street. We have built up our police force now back to 800, over 800 on our authorized level, but we need probably 1,000. So we need two things. We need more police, but we have to have a sustainable funding plan because the police are very expensive over the next 4 or 5 years. And we need to change the deployment of policing to community-based policing, where police are more in the streets, connecting to the community, bridging that trust with the community that's been pretty explosive in a lot of cities out there. And I think by having that presence, and it's been proven that you'll have that deterrence will deter crime, it'll lower crime. And the other thing is to really take on the underlying issue of poverty and lack of opportunity for a big portion of our population. We need to create jobs, thousands of jobs, for people to have opportunities to work and become part of the American dream. Then we may not need to have so many police because we have people that have jobs, that are gainfully employed, that are contributing to this society. That's what we need.
Now, you mentioned you want to add 200 police officers. What is the plan to pay for that?
That's a good point because it's about roughly $20 million a year. Anybody who knows my record on the city council, I'm a very staunch fiscal conservative. I know the numbers. The way to pay for that is to generate and expand the economy. A robust economy that can produce a lot of jobs can increase the value of houses. You take, for example, Fresno has a median price of a home of about $200,000, so at 1%, roughly $2,000 is generated. Los Gatos, by comparison, the median value of a house is $900,000. That's $9,000. So if we can elevate our prices to $300,000 or $400,000, that means one, people are making money that own houses, and two, there's more potential revenue to pay for police and fire. Sales tax is based on a robust economy, a booming economy, room tax, business tax. All those types of things generate money. And we're the first council and administration to do 5-year budgets. So we typically take a COP grant. It's for 2-3 years, and then you're obligated to fund it. We have to identify and make sure there's a sustainable funding stream to do that. I could go on into other things, innovative ideas like selling assets and amortizing properties to generate cash flows to pay for that. And I've clearly demonstrated in my 8 years on the council thinking outside the box and finding solutions.
Now, when you started in council in 2009, Fresno was in the middle of a recession, and the police force went down by 150. How do you explain that to voters? You know, that some say, well, here's Lee Brandt who cut 150 cops. So how do you explain that to voters?
Well, first of all, we started out with actually about 830 authorized positions. At that point in time, about 90 plus of those positions were on federal COP grants. So in essence, the general fund portion was actually down in the sevens, like about 730, 740, because we had to inherit in 2009 that obligation when those federal grants ran out. We never laid off any police officers. It was all through attrition, and it's still an issue nationwide and in the city of Fresno to retain officers. So it got as low as 690, but when you inherit a situation where there's a massive amount of debt that we inherited, there was the Great Recession. We did a great job. We were literally one payroll period away from bankruptcy. We had a junk bond rating, credit rating. 8 years later, we've paid off $36 million in internal loans, built up a $20 million reserve. We've brought the police staffing almost up to 2008 levels to 804. And we've improved our credit rating by both Fitch's and Moody's to investment grade A, which is a huge benefit to the citizens by having lower cost of financing. It saves millions of dollars. So under my leadership on the council, we came from a pretty dark situation, and we've really found a way through a lot of tough decisions to put the city back on the path of recovery.
And some of those tough decisions were letting some police officers go?
No, we never laid off a police officer, never laid off a fire. In fact, there's no layoff clause. But when you have an attrition rate of 3 or 4, and you have a budget where you're literally going from literally paycheck to paycheck, the city of Fresno. We had to make sure we didn't go into bankruptcy. If you look at any city like Stockton, San Bernardino, Vallejo, bankruptcy is devastating. It takes years for this to recover. So our parks departments were devastated. A lot of other departments, we never laid off a police officer or a firefighter. And we were getting by with great work by the men and women of the Fresno Fire Department and Police Department. And what turned everything about 2 or 3 years ago, as I mentioned earlier, was a state prison realignment, Prop 47, and dumping all these people into the streets of Fresno that are, for the most part, criminals and committing criminal activities. That's when the statistics went up.
Right. Probably the second most important issue, or if not the most important issue, is the water situation in Northeast Fresno. How would you solve the problem, first of all? Getting the water on the right track, the pipes. How would you solve that?
Well, from the inception, when this came to my attention by an email from Jeanette Grider, a constituent who was neighbors next door, social media, she sent me an email with like 15 or 16 people attached to it, all with the same problem, all in kind of little different areas around Northeast Fresno. That is when I gave that to the water department. The water department and Tommy Squida immediately started an investigation. And unlike 2004, when the city first had noticed this problem, never really did an investigation, never got beyond about 10 or 15 houses, we launched a full-scale investigation. We engaged the Fresno County Health Department, which was not engaged before, State Department of Water Resources, EPA, and we brought in preeminent private sector experts like Dr. Schnoik and Dr. Edwards, who did the Flint, Michigan. We held 3 very well-attended public sessions. Transparency was out completely, and I passed legislation to ban the use of galvanized pipe in the future. And said, well, they don't use it. Well, they do. I got calls from plumbers. We're still using it. I did another piece of legislation that said in the future, within 14 days of any complaint on water, not only does it do the state mandate, it has to come on the city website to every city council member, to the city manager. I set up a fund because we don't know exactly what it's going to be, this to get the conversation rolling as far as a potential rebate fund for those people impacted by this water crisis. So we did a lot, and at this point in time, we're getting success in that the whole thing really boils down to the combination of surface water and defective galvanized pipes. And at its source, it's a construction defect claim that is long since expired for homeowners to remedy that. You got defective galvanized pipe primarily between 1989 and 1999. I've walked those precincts. You can tell exactly by what precinct you're in, who the builder was, the year it was built, exactly where the problems are at. So they've got called a calcium carbonate. It's a treatment that calcifies the pipes. And when it calcifies the pipes, it takes care of the zinc that was failing. And we're seeing people already, hundreds of people that are getting clear water. Lead levels are down to or below any EPA threshold. Remember, there's 22,000 homes in Northeast Fresno, and roughly less than 5% of the homes were affected. My home has galvanized pipe. It was not a defective galvanized pipe. My home's about 30 years old. Progress is being made. I think at this point in time, there's less than 50 homes that have unacceptable levels of lead, and out of 22,500 homes. And my goal is to make sure not one house in either Northeast Fresno or any place has any unsafe levels of lead, and that we find a solution that eliminates the discolored water or eliminates substantially where it's basically a minor nuisance, but the goal is to get rid of the problem. We're making progress along that way. I think in the next 2-3 months we should be in a position, and coincidentally, probably when the mayor's race is over, be a lot less politicized.
And there's always, speaking of, I don't know if you want to call it politicized, but there's an issue of who should have known when. September 25th, Fresno Bee article mentions that a renter complained to you about the water problem in the mid-2000s, that you had a conversation with somebody by the name of Shan Connor in 2012. So, but you said that you kind of first became aware of it this January 2016 social media post. So when did you become aware?
Well, first of all, finger pointing doesn't solve the problem. That's number one. Everybody's trying to pinpoint this or that. It's only good in a sense that you understand and you learn from the lesson, okay? And what it was fundamentally, the water department was kind of on a rogue and was not reporting to the normal channels of political leaders or, more importantly, to the department heads and the city manager. I had a home in 2004 along Sharon Avenue that The tenant had complained of discolored water. I went to the city like a few of the other people did. The city said, the water delivered to your meter is fine. It's your problem inside the meter. Just tell the tenant to flush the water. Problem solved. The tenant didn't complain to me. I have 3,000 houses. I don't have, I didn't work for the city. I don't recall if Shan Connor, she may have talked to me, but when you talk to one person, okay, the best example was all these people, the Jeanette Grider and all these other people, they had problems for years. Did they know there were 1,000 other houses? No, they didn't know till social media started connecting the dots. So to presume that I have a crystal ball that I should automatically know that I had one house out of thousands in the district that this must be a huge problem. And the other way to answer the question too is, when have I not, in my 8 years on the council, taken an aggressive stance and taken on the unions? I've taken on the SMG on the convention center. I've taken on the SEGA, which was kind of the Shangri-La of the planners. I've taken on many tough issues. And I took on the 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the water infrastructure program, and did debates with people on we need to build a water infrastructure. So my track record is clear. When I see a problem, I tackle it head on. And when this was made apparent, everything is easy in hindsight. I got one email between 2008 and 2016. I probably had 60 or 70,000 emails, and I was copied on an email. Do you remember every email you got? If you got 60,000 and you were copied on one? Or, yeah, there's 2 people had bottled water. Okay, there's no alarm bells. I wouldn't call the Marines out. But when you get an email with 16 people in different geographic locations, that's a red flag.
Now moving from water in Northeast Fresno to water supply as a whole for the city, how will you ensure water supply for the city and the region?
What we did in 2014-15, passing the Water Capital Program, was one of the biggest, most significant things I would have done in my 8 years. For over 50 years, the council kicked the can down the road. They did not want to tackle this water infrastructure problem, and that included former administrations, included former council members like then Councilmember Perea that did not want to tackle it. Councilmember Perea and Supervisor Perea publicly opposed this capital program. But you have to have the courage to do the right thing. And the problem is with the State Water Groundwater Sustainability Act, once that takes effect 2020, for every gallon you take out, you got to replace it. This aquifer, this God-given wonder that's in this valley, has been dropping for 50 years. In 1930, you could go down 10 or 15 feet and hit water. Now you're talking about 150 feet plus, which means it gets more expensive. The water becomes more contaminated. We have several wells in the city of Fresno that are contaminated, particularly in Supervisor Perea's district, southeast Fresno, where there's a lot of contamination from DCP and from chemicals. So what we did by building the centerpiece, the surface water treatment plant, can process 80 million gallons a day. These 2 surface water treatment plants in tandem will take all the pressure off the surface, off the aquifer, which means the aquifer can, over a period of 20, 30 years, can actually be restored back to close to its 1930 levels. So absolutely essential that we do that. It's also absolutely essential that we figure out now in Northeast how to treat the water, so when Southeast water treatment comes online, we have the proper chemical treatment so we don't repeat the same problem in Northeast.
Now, one of the things with building the new plant, people notice that their water rates have gone up. So, what's your reaction when you have constituents, you have people in the city asking you, why are my water rates going up?
Well, I'll give you a choice. If you didn't build a surface water treatment plant, there would be almost no water pressure in Northeast Fresno. I was there in 1989. I had all these low flow deals. I took them off the regular ones because you couldn't have enough pressure to take a shower. The water is getting contaminated. There's not sufficient water. The rationing will get more severe, particularly if the drought comes on. This is an opportunity. And to do an opportunity like this is expensive. And you have to plan it out well. So we financed part of it. Part was done with the rates. The rates were going to go from about $25 to about $50 over a 4 or 5 year period of time. Even at $50 per month, Fresno is the lowest city in the state of California of any city over 100,000, and one of the lowest, period. Los Angeles is over $100. So to add $10 or $20 or $25 to a water bill to make sure your children, your grandchildren have a long-term, sustainable, safe water supply, to me is certainly worth it, and we did it in a proper way. This was a massive $430 million project. we financed about $300 million. Now, we originally had looked at market rate financing, 5.5, but we took the extra measure, and thanks to Councilman Steve Brando and others who worked with the state of California gave that $300 million at 1.6%. That change saved ratepayers $204 million. The construction, and the city's got a bad record of not being on budget, being over budget on time. I passed 2 legislative acts. The Construction Management Act was one that provides private sector best practices, an oversight board. The 3 major components of this project so far have all came in substantially under bid, and they're on time. This is a new city. This is a city with good planning and good leadership.
Now, moving on to doing business in the city of Fresno. Now, I've heard every candidate, I'm going to cut red tape, I'm going to make it easier. But specifically, what are your plans to make it easier for anybody to get a permit or to develop? How do you make that easier for people?
Well, I'm the only political person out there running for office who has construction experience. My firm, Westco Construction, has done hundreds of projects up and down the San Joaquin Valley. We've did tax credit properties up and down the state for rehab. We've taken apartment complexes, totally restored them. We've built apartments, we've built houses. We've done the maintenance for our properties. I've pulled permits in several cities. So I'm the only one who actually pulled a permit, went through the plan check process. I think I understand this problem better than in my competitor in this race and other people. And some progress has been made. Part of the problem, a big part of the problem, is the culture at City Hall. I don't think they've ever quite get it that, if this is the private sector and you're not taking care of your customers, your competitor is going to get that. So we need to change that culture. We need to do things like having online more, the technology where you can go online and pull a permit. You can go online. This is getting the software. And a year ago, the council was like, it's called, I forgot the name of the software, but it's like $2 or $3 million. It's not cheap. But that's an investment in the software that you can actually track your projects. So you can go online, this is my version, pull your permit, and you can track online the plan check process, where it's going, where the hang-ups are. There's still work to be done. One of my top priorities would be to continue the work that's been done and to finally say we have made Fresno the best business-friendly city in the state of California.
Now, would you retain the current staffing level of the development department?
I'm not going to comment on personnel, because these are people's lives, people, whether they're staff workers, whether they're department heads. I've worked there 8 years, so I pretty well know who the good people are, who the people that may not be as good, but I'm not going to comment on those kind of decisions because it's not fair to the people, and number 2, I'm not elected yet. So
would you make any changes in that department head or any department heads in general?
I'm not going to publicly comment on them. I think there are changes that will align the right people in the right positions and make some changes to improve the delivery of service on an area that, again, has undergone a lot of transformation. I think you're right. Every administration comes by and tries to do it, but it's not an easy problem to tackle, but it's certainly an obtainable one. And I think I bring in the experience to have that capability to understand and implement a program that does finally move Fresno to the point we want to be on business friendly.
Now, do you plan to retain Police Chief Jerry Dyer?
Yes, I think he's done an excellent job.
And Fire Chief Kerry Donis?
Yes.
What are your thoughts for a new city manager? You're going to pick a new city manager with Bruce Rudd impending retirement?
I worked on the 3 city managers, and I think Bruce was the best, in my opinion, in terms of my ability to work with him. I'm fairly certain Bruce is getting a short-termer. I hope I can get him to stay on 6 months to a year. He's going to leave. And then when he leaves, I'll take a look at the existing people. I'll definitely consider a national search to find the best and brightest. And one of the things that hamstrung the Swearingen administration, because we came on at a time when there was recession, we're trying to avoid bankruptcy. It was hard when Jerry Dyer initially wanted to retire. You're talking about paying $200,000 a year, $250,000, $300,000. Oh my God, we can't pay that much money. Well, my answer, you can't afford not to pay the right amount of money to get the right person, because a chief of police or a city manager can make or break a city. So investing another $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year in the compensation can make the difference between having multi-million-dollar lawsuits, having an inefficient city that doesn't manage itself properly. So my goal is on those positions, to give anybody who's there in the staff an opportunity to compete. But I want to definitely open it up to a national search.
All right. We touched on this a little bit before, but how would you raise a level of prosperity for all the residents of Fresno?
Well, you have to create jobs. I'm the only candidate out there that has a detailed blueprint on how to create jobs. It's called the Economic Expansion Act. I spent over 1 year writing and researching, taking in best practices from several cities. I collaborated with the mayor on the final version of it. And it lays out 3 levels of incentives. And these are levels and incentives that require accountability. In other words, we don't simply give away money up front and try to get something on its back. The first level is basically an abatement of your development on-site development impact fees. And to do that, you'd have to take some property and make substantial improvements on it to increase the number of jobs and the tax base for the city of Fresno. And typically within 2 years, it's paid back the investment. The second level is off-site improvements. And I don't think there's anything out there right now that does that except this act. That's things like streets, curbs, gutters, signalized intersections. It's a higher level of investment, pays back within 2 years. The third level was best demonstrated by the Nordstrom's deal that may or may not happen, where you take a large player like Nordstrom's coming in to take over a land maybe valued at a couple $1 million, building a $200 million plant, which is a huge investment, employing up to 1,000 people, performance-based incentives. When you get to 1,000 employees, we're going to start giving you a rebate on your sales tax. Now this would, if it ever went through, would save them about $12 million, $13 million, but over 20, 25 years would save the city in terms of just the additional revenue generated, because guess what? There's 0 e-commerce centers in Fresno County, $25 to $35 million. Then there's the secondary or induced effect, the ripple across the economy. If I hire 1,000 more people making $15, $20 an hour, whatever they pay, they're going to buy a big screen TV, they're going to lease a car, they're going to buy appliances. There's going to be more people hired along that way. So it has a multiplier effect. The same as when you put a construction project out there. And you have the people that buy it directly, the construction workers, and you got the people that buy the pool and the patio and the furniture. That's the kind of thing that makes it happen. And so you have a comprehensive program, and they have other elements too. Developing a localized venture capital fund, a fund dedicated to local entrepreneurs. We've got places like Bitwise that are astounding success. So let's find the next Bill Gates, next Mark Zuckerberg, and have them do something in Fresno. Let's take agriculture and marry agriculture technology. We have the Wet Center at Fresno State. We've got advanced technology on like drones that fly over agricultural fields that can measure barometric pressure, water, moisture content, extremely precise and scientific. We've never put the pieces together in Fresno. This Economic Expansion Act outlines developing a venture capital fund, expanding and initiating career technical education. We talked about this for 25 years. This says the city of Fresno has over 3,000 jobs. Why don't we have internships for plumbers, pipe fitters, bus drivers, bus mechanics, to help these people get training, to work with State Center Junior College and Fresno Unified to finally get a campus, a full campus for career technical education. The city's being a partner in internships. And then the final element is the demand side, is attacking that core poverty of 25% of our population. 1 in 4 don't participate. Supporting programs like the Fresno Bridge Academy, run by grants, by private grants. They take in people that are on public assistance. They take in not just a wage earner, the entire family. They teach them parenting skills, GED, basic job training. And they've had a phenomenal success rate. The first class, they had 84% of the people graduate. They now have engaged 3,000 families, and these are hardcore families in Fresno. We can reach these people, give them the God-given opportunity we all had here in the city of Fresno, so we don't have the North Fresno, South Fresno tale of 2 cities. We have a tale of 1 city. That's how, and this is not going to be easy, and this is going to take a lot of work and a lot of collaboration with the county, with the private sector, with all the different agencies engaged in this process. I believe it can be done, and I believe I'm the only one who's demonstrated the capability to do that by having the technical expertise, by having the collaborative skills as measured by having 10 current or former Fresno City Council members endorsing me, 9 current, incoming, or former Fresno County supervisors endorsing me, state senators, assemblymen, congressional people. That's a testament to my ability to work with people and to get things done.
Now, what kind of companies would you recruit to come to Fresno? Where would you go?
Well, the first thing that I learned in doing my research is most business comes from your own backyard. Something like 3 or 4% is actually business relocating to a different geographic location. So you've got a good example like JD Foods, a local food manufacturer. They recently expanded. They used provisions of the Economic Expansion Act in terms of the fee abatements to expand their plant. So they're going, let's say, from 100 people to maybe 150 people, or maybe they were going to go to Madera and you would have lost 100 positions. So you have to look in your own backyard. You've got all these young entrepreneurs right there at Bitwise right now. And again, who knows where the next tech extra is going to be, and our focusing our expertise on ag. So we have to set up, and what happens in Fresno, I've seen it too often, is from the job training, the venture capital people, the bank financiers, they operate in silos. They don't seem to get together. I want to bring all these people together, maybe with one local area board that governs these things, that finally gets focused on finding ways to encourage the business in Fresno. You mentioned earlier, business-friendly Fresno, getting that thing going, incubating new businesses, and we have to, doing the tools that make Fresno attractive for Nordstrom's and other types of employers, because you do one Nordstrom's every 5 to 10 years, you're in pretty good shape.
How much of a priority would parks and green space be in your administration?
Well, we had a debate forum a couple nights ago, and parks are absolutely essential to the quality of life of our citizens. And Fresno, I think, is one of the lowest ranking cities in the state and in the country for parks. The dilemma we have is that we have existing parks that are dramatically underfunded. Woodward Park alone has 57 acres with no irrigation system. So you have to think of ways to improve that, and innovative ways. So we're developing this purple pipe system. This is taking reclaimed sewer water, making that irrigation water, which now we're up to about 25,000 acre feet, which is almost a year's worth of water supply. So within a couple of years, you're going to have the city of Fresno generating 25,000 acre feet of reclaimed water, and a purple pipe system that delivers that reclaimed water to, say, the Woodward Park, the Roding Park, all the other parks. And this reclaimed water potentially is an incentive to a future food processing plant, which is very water intensive. We have a deal with PG&E that they offer incentives for, okay. But we have to address the existing park. We have to be smart, and grants, innovative funds like new market tax credits can not only fund capital projects, they can fund maintenance projects. We have to improve not only in the parks, but the network of trails, particularly in South Fresno, that's really lacking on the trails and the connectivity. And most of all, we have to have safe parks, because I can have all the parks in the world. If you're afraid to take your family out because there are bullets whizzing by, that's not going to do any good.
All right, speaking of parks, Chancey Park. How should the city handle the lease going forward with the Fresno Grizzlies?
Well, the lease is a contract, so you can't change anything. It was a huge mistake to begin with. There was a lack of due diligence. The $1.5 million is never remotely close to market. We actually measured market level when I came in 2009 to do to help negotiate the lease, to essentially drop it from 1.5 to 750. What was proposed to the public is would never cost more than $600,000, and it's costing about $2.5 to $3 million. So the public has been taken in the shorts in that one. The stadium's there. It's a beautiful stadium. We have to live with it. This current team, who gets $1 million naming rights, that was never even factored in initial due diligence, loses over $1 million a year. And I know that because I'm the person who made them do outside independent audits. As we speak right now, they probably owe the city over $1 million. They've been trying to sell the team for 3 to 4 years. Nobody's biting at $750. Probably to get somebody there that would take over and be successful, you'd probably have to drop the lease even more. So when my opponent talks about raising rent, it's just totally absurd, because who would want to go from losing $1 million a year to $2 million a year? Well, the team would stay. If the team files bankruptcy, they're gone. So we're stuck with a mistake that was made, but we need to make the best of it, and the best of it is to work with it, whatever team is there, and do market level negotiation. It's better to have half rent than no rent, and that's, had we not renegotiated, I can absolutely guarantee you that'd be a vacant stadium costing the city $3.5 million a year. So
it's better that the city take on a little bit more with the rent, as opposed to taking nothing if the team leaves.
We really have no choice. I mean, I'm the guy, the business person. This is business 101. There's a market value. If that market value of that stadium lease, and really, as measured by all the teams in AAA, is a rent between about 0 to about 300 or 400 or 500. That's the market rent. You dropped it from 1.5 to 5, and they're losing $1 million a year. Would you want to continue losing $1 million a year? Would you say, I'm going to get out of here and get out of Dodge, right? They're at the point, in my opinion, the tipping point that something's going to happen. So we have to find a solution. So making false promises and essentially my opponent, Mr. Perea, not recognizing he made a mistake and trying to do the old lemon to lemonade is a disservice to the city of Fresno.
How would you rate the performance of Mayor Swearingen over the last 8 years?
I would give her an A because she came at a time when this, as I mentioned earlier, when the city was in massive financial debt, the Great Recession. She took on the two most powerful lobbying groups, which are the labor unions and the developers, and tried to implement a vision that had been tried before, but had never really been fully successful. And I think she led the city in, as I did from the council, to financial solvency, to building up a reserve, to paying off loans, to getting the economy back on track. Did I agree with everything? Absolutely not. There were times I disagreed very vocally on things like Hotel Fresno when that first came in and some budget battles. But you fight with passion for those things you believe in.
All right. Theoretical question.
Mm-hmm.
Would Mayor Brand welcome and greet President Clinton when she comes to Fresno?
My job as the mayor is to respect the office, not the person. If the President of the United States comes to Fresno, my job would be to extend all courtesies. And if we can get money from Washington, if the President, whether it's President Clinton or President Trump, are going to pay attention to Fresno and our water storage crisis and our poverty problem, then I would do everything I could to roll out the red carpet to say, please pay attention, just don't do a flyby and take off. Take your time and understand this town, and please help us with what we need.
So you ready to go out to FYI? Shake your hand.
If I had to, yes. Yeah, no matter who the president is. I mean, it's the office you respect.
All right, finally, describe the state of our city after the first term of Mayor Lee Brand.
In my last 100 days of my first term, unemployment has dropped to around 6-7%. And we want to keep it at below 10%. We've hired maybe 50 to 100 more police officers. The economy is steaming. Business is easier to do in the city of Fresno. We're starting to do the basic stuff. We didn't even discuss streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks. Believe me, you walk to precincts, you get the basics.
Oh, we could be here all day talking about that.
We got parks that are being watered by Purple Pipe System. We're starting to build new parks and trails. And we're getting a feeling where people take pride in the city. This is the leader. I don't feel embarrassed to be from Fresno. I'm proud to be from Fresno. And for me, this has been my entire life. I was here since 1954. I have 4 children, 3 grandchildren, and 1 due in March. So I'm vested. My family's vested. I want this to be a better community for all of us. I want to improve the quality of life. This is really important for all of our citizens. I grew up as a poor Okie kid on McKenzie Street. And I had nothing. I was the first one in my family to finish college and develop a successful business and realize the American dream. I want today's youth to have the same opportunities in jobs, education, and business that I did so many years ago as a young man on McKenzie Street.
This is Councilman Lee Brand. He wants to be the next mayor for the city of Fresno. Thank you for joining us here on GVWire.
Thank you, David.